Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumbler House, here with the glad trad himself, Charles Coulombe.
Wow, I feel so glad and trad. It's great.
Good. Yeah, you're the glad trad, so you should be.
Boy, oh boy, oh.
What's new?
What's new? Well, a couple of things very exciting. Today in several of our states is King Lee Day.
King Lee Day?
King Lee Day.
Oh, that's
not commemorating King Lee, whoever he might have been. It's commemorating those great Americans, Robert E. Lee and Martin Luther King, who happen to have been born on the same day.
interesting.
So in some places they commemorate them together, which I think is a nice thing. Though I can see some ignoramus going, "Who's this King Lee? I'm an American. We don't celebrate no foreign monarch like this King Lee. No, sir." And I can also see where that might arouse some hackles, but maybe hackles need to be aroused. I don't know. But it's also the birthday of one of my favorite Americans, who, frankly, I have to admit, in my personal opinion, probably contributed more to us than either King or Lee.
Criswell?
No, not Criswell's birthday, although you're right. Criswell's given more to this country than anyone, from Columbus to the present. No, that's for sure. No, is Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, wow.
Today is Poe's birthday. I consider him to be one of my holy trinity of early American writers, with Washington Irving, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Poe. And you can actually think of James Fenimore Cooper and Longfellow. But Longfellow was a poet, and Cooper would make it 4 instead of 3. It's hard to have a 4-man trinity.
Yeah.
Anyway, these were the guys that really put this country on the map in terms of a literature of our own. And, you know, the
Mark Twain, the great American author, is not on your list?
Well, you know, number one, he was later than the others.
That's true.
And number two, he was certainly a very American writer. But he was building on what these three had already done. Remember, he made his fame after the Civil War.
Mm.
But the three of them, you know, and you could add to it, since I mentioned Longfellow poetry, you could add Stephen Foster in song.
Yes.
That was at the antebellum United States. You know, that country that existed from 1789 to 1860.
I see.
That country, which the Civil War killed.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of whether you're pro-Union or pro-Confederate or whatever, once you've remade Humpty Dumpty, he's not Humpty Dumpty anymore.
Yeah.
He's something else. I mean, you can make the argument, and a lot of people do, I have, that the apogee of the American nationality was 1865 to 1941. That was our greatest period as a nation, I would argue. But whether it was good, whether it was bad, it was not the same country as the one that existed from 1789 to 1860.
That's surprising coming from you, saying that, listing the greatest period of American history. Like, what's your criteria on that one?
Well, that was when we had the basic... See, before that time, in the old republic, we were basically a series of semi-independent states.
Yeah.
After that time, we were a united country, and that was when most of the American things we consider American developed. Our ways of celebrating holidays, people like Mark Twain, the whole Americana thing really developed at that time. And I ended in 1941 because after that we stopped being a country and became the arsenal of democracy and all that kind of stuff, an empire.
I see. So sort of from a cultural standpoint?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was our best time necessarily in terms of morals or anything else, but it's when it was when the American nationality was most clearly defined. And for good and ill, I mean.
Yeah.
You know, we produced some extraordinary writers at that time, some really great art. That was when the American songbook was really codified. The American cocktail was codified. There was the rise of vaudeville and the Broadway musical, film,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Hollywood, very much a product of the last few decades of that era. The golden days of Hollywood, and the golden days of comics, and the golden days of science fiction. All those golden ages were in that period. So, anyway, there you go.
Okay.
And it's still the Christmas season.
When does Christmas season end?
Never. No, it doesn't end at all, ladies and gentlemen. No. Sadly, it comes to a crashing halt February 2nd.
Wow.
Candlemas.
Okay.
And then, of course, we'll be in Mardi Gras. Carnival.
That's true.
Getting ready for Lent.
Yes.
You heard about the lady whose husband came home one day and looked at the salad and pasta she put on his plate. And he said, "Where's my steak?" And she said, "It's Lent." He said, "You better get it back. I'm hungry."
Better get the steak back. I'm hungry?
Yeah, because she told her it was Lent.
Oh, okay. I got it. Ha ha ha.
Little carnival joke for all you guys out there getting ready to...
Okay.
All right, let's move it right along. What do we got?
All right. First question from Jonathan Bennett. What does Charles think about Vladimir Soloviev, particularly the points he makes in his book, Russia and the Universal Church?
It's great. I admire Soloviev tremendously. His analysis, I think, is correct. I think that if Russia is ever reconciled with the Holy See, it will be a tremendous force for good in this world.
Soloviev is a writer. What is he known for?
Russia and the Universal Church. Also, he's known for, a short story of the Antichrist, but it's part of a larger work, something in the end of history. A number of other things. He died in 1900, late 19th century philosopher in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
They call him the Russian Newman because he converted to Catholicism.
Okay.
At a time when that was not done. The Orthodox like to say that he returned because he received the Orthodox sacraments on his deathbed. But as we know, there was no other way to get them.
Yeah.
And you or I could have the Orthodox sacraments on our deathbed as far as the church is concerned, without apostatizing.
Interesting.
Because you need those sacraments when you're dying.
Yeah.
And it's more important that you get them than whoever they come from.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So what was, Soloviev's contribution?
Well, several things. Firstly, at the time that he was writing, Russia, and there's been an eruption of this since communism, was in the hands of very much dominated Russian philosophy by the people who are called the Slavophiles. And they got themselves into a kind of a circular argument, as he points out very well. Well, what's the value of orthodoxy? Well, it incarnates the spirit of the Russian people. Okay, but what's the value of Russia? It's the vessel of orthodoxy. What's the value? Yeah. Now, and oddly enough, by the way, at the same time, other thinkers were doing the same thing in France and Spain, vis-a-vis Spain and Catholicism. It's an easy circular thing to get into.
Yeah.
But he pointed out that in its earliest days, both the Church in Russia and Byzantium had, in fact, been subject to the Holy See. Not subject in exactly the same way as, say, Italy or Spain, because they were in a different patriarchate.
Yeah. But
still, he cites a number of examples of Eastern acceptance, indisputably Eastern acceptance, of Roman primacy. In other words, appeals to Rome during various doctrinal crises and so on. So, he also pointed out that what is true orthodoxy, and he defines it at some length. You ask, what are the people, what is it to be orthodox? To receive the sacraments, to believe in the councils, to venerate the Virgin Mary and the saints. He goes on and on and on. It says, but He says that is the true orthodoxy of the Russian people, and it's ours, meaning his, orthodoxy also. But it is also identical to true Catholicism.
Ah.
And that's a very important thing to understand. If you set aside for a moment the clergy yapping at each other the way they love to do,
Mm-hmm.
put that aside. Sorry, just smacking a priest around. Anyway, you put that aside, you see that sociologically, as it were, Catholicism and Orthodoxy are very similar indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw what wishes a lot of Catholics and Orthodox saw, is the integral connection between Catholicism and Orthodoxy that all the attempts at schism have not been able to destroy.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
but basically his point was that Orthodoxy cannot truly be itself unless it's reunited with Catholicism, but Catholicity cannot accomplish its major goals of evangelization and so on without the Orthodox, and specifically without the Russians.
Okay. Next question is from Nick. I was wondering what you think of Michel de Montaigne. His essays were on the church's list of banned books at some point, but I don't know for how long. I've heard various things about him, but I would really value your thoughts. From what I've heard, it appears he always kept his faith and died in communion with the Catholic Church, yet was an extreme skeptic who believed man can know nothing.
No, that's all true. Next. No.
Those two viewpoints seem irreconcilable.
They would, I suppose, until you stop and think about how people really are. You remember, especially how Frenchmen are. A bit later than Montaigne, though not much, was a fellow called Pascal. And Pascal came up with what was called Pascal's wager,
Mm-hmm.
which is that if the faith is true, and one believes it, one may go to heaven, one doesn't, he won't.
Yeah.
If the faith is not true, no one's going to heaven.
Right.
And so even the person who thinks that the faith is false doesn't win.
You're right.
So it's called Pascal's wager. Well, it reflects the same kind of mindset. In other words, a practical skepticism with a theoretical belief, which is very hard to reconcile for most people. De Montaigne had a beautiful writing style, very clear, very convincing on the on grounds of its clarity, but ultimately erroneous. Which is why I don't know how long it was on, but his work was in fact on the index. I don't remember how long. But nevertheless, these were all for him theoretical things. In practical terms, he was a Catholic.
He was a practicing Catholic.
No.
So he was just skeptic in name, I guess. In his theory.
In theory.
Yeah.
But again, he also liked to poke fun at church corruption and things like that. He liked to poke fun at corruption of all kinds, which, as with Erasmus in the 1500s, made him rather unpopular amongst churchmen.
Mm-hmm.
But like Erasmus, however skeptical he might have been of churchmen, he believed in the church. I know it's hard to believe that there could have been a time when people saw clergy as different from the faith, as the faith is something that is wonderful and true, but that clerics can be good or bad depending on how they adhere to the faith. I know that that's a hard concept to wrap our heads around today.
Gosh.
But yeah, but
He must have lived a long time ago. When did he live?
Yeah, 17th century, 1600s,
Wow.
very, very long time ago. Everything's different now.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else we got?
Okay. Next question is from Rosie.
Hello, Rosie.
What exactly is church discipline, and is it infallible? I've seen many quotes from popes saying that it's impossible for church discipline to err. How can we reconcile this with the news about Amoris Laetitia and the letter to the Argentine bishops being placed in the Acta
Apostolicae Sedis?
There you go. What is that last thing, by the way? What gets placed in there?
Supposedly magisterial statements.
The Amoris Laetitia got placed in there?
By direct order of the Holy Father himself, with the letter with his private letter to the Argentine bishops.
That's not magisterial by definition, almost.
Yeah, I know. So that tells us something about the Acta Apostolicae Sedis, doesn't it?
Okay. Okay, so... Wow.
You okay? You seem confused. Upset. Would you like some Ovaltine?
Yes, please.
Hold on. All right, they've got the message upstairs. You'd be happy to know that at the little dining nook off the restaurant,
Yeah.
they're mixing you an Ovaltine as we speak.
I feel better.
I thought you might.
Okay, so, yeah, what exactly is church discipline, and is it infallible?
Ovaltine. No, it's not infallible. Church discipline is simply the way Catholics are supposed to behave. And what is discipline? Well, fasting. What is required in terms of fasting? What is required? Discipline is the kind of behavior the church requires out of her members. But that behavior can change.
Mm.
And the fact that it can change, that it can be changed, shows that it's not infallible.
Yeah.
Because if something can change, by definition, it's not infallible. Canon law is not infallible. Because it can be, it has been changed. And no one disputes this. Why do they change it? In response to whatever the leadership perceives as current conditions.
Mm.
You know, for instance, many of our processions, like the I can't think of the Rogation days and the Ember days and things like that. Those processions were originally brought up to combat a plague or a famine or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They were kept because they continued to fill a real need.
Yeah.
But now, in terms of popes saying discipline will never err, I've never heard that, so I can't speak to it. But what I certainly can speak to is the fact that where mine is going. Just putting something in the Acta Apostolicae Sedis doesn't guarantee anything except that it was generated out of the Holy See.
Okay.
Because we have definitions as to what's infallible, what isn't infallible. I understand that the Holy Father has an agenda, and I understand that in the pursuit of that agenda, he's willing to mix and match and obfuscate sometimes the law, and to sort of get around these definitions. I'm also aware of the fact that his education is lacking. And I suspect from some of the things he says that he's simply not aware that just calling something magisterial doesn't mean anything at all. You can say that. You can say whatever you like. You can say, if you wish to, I'm made out of cut glass. No flesh, no blood, no bone. I am made out of cut glass. Well, you can say that.
Wouldn't be true.
No, it wouldn't be true, but I could say it. If I were Pope, I could say it. I could go out onto the terrace at St. Peter's and say, my good children, I am made not of flesh and blood and bone. I am made of cut glass. I could do that. And then I could have that speech published in the Acta Apostolicae Sedis.
Wow. Well, you can do a lot of things as Pope.
Yeah, you can do a lot of things. You can do what Julius III did and build your boyfriend a big villa in Rome. It's a pretty villa, too.
Isn't that the warrior Pope?
No, it was Julius II.
Oh, okay.
He had other issues. Although, given the two of them, I'd have taken the warrior Pope. Like,
Yeah.
That's just me.
Okay. So, It's strange the way Rosie's clergyman worded it, that you can't err with church discipline, because it seems like it's not true or false. It's strict or lax.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's not, Battle of Bunker Hill, true or false. What happened? Right or wrong? It occurred. It didn't happen on Bunker Hill. It was on Breeds Hill. But I mean, I don't know what you want out of me. HMS King George V. What about him? Strict or lax? And the problem is, a lot of what's coming out of Rome today is like that. So you scratch your head and say, what? The iron filings, good food. No, actually, Holy Father. Iron filings are not food. You can eat them, I guess. Eat enough of them, you'll be sick, maybe die. If you only eat a small amount, they're not going to get any nutritional value. If you say iron filings aren't good food, you're not a good Catholic and you hate the Pope. No. I'm not happy if he says iron filings are made of food. I'm not happy about that because it makes him look stupid. But I don't hate him. I'm just aware that iron filings aren't really food. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a good thing. It's not really something I've ever assigned a moral value to. It just isn't that way. Yes, but I say that iron filings are food and this is a magisterial teaching. No. You see, you can call it that, you can say it is, but that of its nature does not make it that. See, we have definitions.
Yeah.
The problem is when you get outside those definitions and begin making up language on your own, it's hard for people to respect you.
Yeah.
If I come out and I say, my father was a wonderful she-elephant in the veld in Africa. Mm-hmm. The likelihood is that my father was not a she-elephant, nor one living in Africa. Not even one living in India. Mm-hmm. It makes it tough for the Catholic, I admit. But discipline is not infallible because it is changeable. And discipline is not true or false, it is lax or it is severe. That's it.
Okay. Next question is from Sherry Hinton. I happened to watch the clip of Mr. Coulombe discussing the syllabus of errors and the uncertain bounds of the ordinary magisterium.
Yeehaw!
I have wondered myself how a Catholic knows what is infallible teaching and what isn't, and so far I have not been able to find a good answer. This is an ambiguity that seems to go right to the heart of the Catholic claim to be the visible guardian of revealed truth. It seems to render the claim ineffectual, and I could see why confusion over what counts as infallible would lessen our credibility and make those outside the faith take us less seriously. This said, can Mr. Coulombe follow up on this issue in more detail and assess what we know about the Magisterium and what we don't know, and the impact of the latter on one's ability to assent to the Church as Christ's vicar?
Oof. Well, that goes right back to the question before, doesn't it? Really? Mm-hmm. They're connected. Well, let's get into it. The extraordinary magisterium versus the ordinary magisterium. Now, the extraordinary magisterium is important. Why? Because it is infallible. And what does it consist of? The books of the Bible. The infallible doctrinal teachings of the ecumenical councils of the Church. All right, that's important you keep that in mind. not their disciplinary acts, which can change. And I see a rule that we should never kneel at Mass, because kneeling is a penitential thing. That was revoked. But the doctrinal teachings are infallible, especially if they're enforced with an anathema. Infallible teachings of the popes. Now, what are these? These are when the popes invoke infallibility. That doesn't happen very often. It's happened twice since infallibility was defined, and only a few times before that. What else is infallible? Saints, canonizations of saints. Some would argue the beatifications of blessings as well. And also the consensus of the church fathers. That is, when the fathers of the church, or almost all of them, agree on a point, that's considered to be approaching infallibility. And then, of course, lastly but not leastly, the four creeds. If it's in the four creeds, you got to believe it. It's infallible. All right. Now, what is the ordinary magisterium? The ordinary magisterium is the teaching of the authority of the teaching of the teaching authority of the church, the magisterium, attempting to apply the infallible magisterium to immediate real-world situations. That's what it is, really. Now, the problem is that its limits have never been defined. Its infallibility, if any, has never been defined. Its history is very much connected with the church having to fight non-Catholic regimes. So, how then do you tell whether or not something in the ordinary magisterium is infallible? The answer is, look at the footnotes. Honestly. I mean, if you look at, say, an encyclical, which is probably the most common method now of the ordinary magisterium, when the Pope makes his points, look and see what it's coming from. Is it from Scripture? Is it quoting a council? Or is it quoting himself in an earlier encyclical? That will tell you something. The other issue, of course, is that as time has gone on since Vatican I, there occurred what a good friend of mine has called creeping infallibilism, which is the idea that everything that comes out of the Holy See is infallible. And it's all part of the ordinary magisterium. Well, okay, what about the bishops' conferences? What they teach? Yes, it's part of the ordinary magisterium, and it's infallible. Well, what about what my bishop, part of the ordinary magisterium? And you get to this point to where it's just crazy. At that point, I think the Holy Father is helping us with. Now, what do I mean when I say helping us with? Clearly, this is a gooey area where we need a definition. We really do. But historically speaking, definitions only come about in the church when there's a crisis caused by the lack of a definition in an area. I firmly believe that the Holy Father's actions will in fact spark an eventual definition on the limits of infallibility, on the limits of the ordinary magisterium. I have absolutely no doubt of that. So in this sense, he too is playing his role.
Okay. So an example of the ordinary magisterium would be something like Humanae Vitae.
Yeah.
Is that what you, okay.
That'd be a good example. And then you say, well, that's not infallible, it's only an encyclical. But then you read it. Yeah, I know. You read the thing. That's hard for the modern mind to comprehend, raised on the internet. But you actually read the document beginning to end.
Oh, we don't listen to people tell us what it says.
No. You don't just look at the title and decide you don't like it.
Oh.
No, you read the thing. All right?
Okay.
And then you read the footnotes. Where's he getting this stuff? And when you see where it's coming from, that's his repeating solemn teaching. In other words, Humanae Vitae, as encyclical, is not in and of itself infallible. But Paul VI was repeating prior infallible teaching. This will shock you, but I'll give you an analogy. You yourself, over the course of this past week, have made an infallible statement.
Really?
Yep.
That's great. What'd I say?
The creed.
Aw.
Yeah, I know. I know. But at least you made one.
Yeah.
So I hope that clears things up. The problem is that in practical application, these things have gotten very sticky between the creeping infallibilism and the desire of modern theologians, to include our dear Holy Father, to alter the church into something more pleasant for modern man. It's gotten very annoying, very silly. And where you get an insight into that dominant thought is in the paper on limbo from the International Theological Commission. Which is a fascinating document. Again, I urge everyone to read it, because the first part of it is a history of the teaching on limbo. And you see how it develops. And it's perfectly organic, constantly tied to infallible sources.
Mm-hmm.
But then we make this sudden right turn, and we're off County Road 238 and into the jungle.
Uh-oh.
He says, in the middle of the 20th century, theologians began to demand the right to imagine new solutions. Now, sometimes people are more truthful than they understand they're being. The implication here is that theology is not a discovery of pre-existing reality, but a kind of intellectual fantasy you make up.
Yeah, your imagination.
Yeah, woo! Yeah! And you know, the problem with that is that it may be nice for you, but I'll go to the Ren Fair. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys go play your little game, and I'll go play my little game. I'll be at the Ren Fair or the SCA or something. Because if that's all our faith is something for a bunch of elderly people to play with,
Mm-hmm.
they can eat it, as far as I'm concerned. Fortunately, that's not what the faith is.
Yeah.
It's the means that leads to eternal life that were given to us by God Himself. There's an old French saying, which in English runs, the church is the priest, but too often the priests think that they're the church.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'll take it a step further. The faith is truth, but too often theologians think that they're the faith.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're little mouths. I mean, if you get the consensus of chemists together, yapping about something, is that chemistry?
Not necessarily.
Only to the degree that it actually conforms to chemical reality.
Yeah.
If you get a bunch of chemists together and they've decided that if you pour sulfuric acid on your head, you'll grow mushrooms, well, they can decide that. They can say that, but it's cut off from reality.
Yeah.
Similarly, these theologians of whom the International Theological Commission spoke cut themselves off from reality. And so similarly, a lot of things that are attempting to be the ordinary magisterium have cut themselves off from reality. And it doesn't matter whether it's the Holy Father or Monsignor Oblivion at your parish.
Mm-hmm.
If it does not coincide, if it contradicts the infallible teaching of the extraordinary magisterium, it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's just, and wrong not in the sense that the person who pushes it is evil,
Yeah.
but in the sense that he is incorrect.
Yeah.
He may mean well, I don't know. I can't read their minds, for which I'm grateful. But
I recently read the trilogy of Jesus of Nazareth by Pope Benedict.
yeah, did you enjoy it? I haven't read it.
I highly recommend it. And he critiques a lot of liberal exegetes in there. And he has this one epic line that I will never forget. Where he simply says that this liberal person is valuing theory over listening to the text.
Yeah.
In other words, what this guy is saying has no basis in the Bible.
No.
He's just out in the clouds. But that was Pope Benedict's very concise way to just say this guy's
concise and not insulting.
And not insulting.
See, that's where he was good with this stuff. I can't help it, you know.
Yeah.
But you talk about a real gentleman.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I saw that line and I was like, you know, wow, he gets it.
Yeah.
He really gets it. He sees these people and he knows these guys are out to lunch.
Yeah, they're off in the clouds with their own little woo.
Yeah. But
I can see myself in my own head. It's like being surrounded by a mirror.
Yeah. But I don't know. I was just so happy that he saw what everyone else is seeing. It's
not everyone. They don't see it.
Well, they don't see it.
No, they're still wearing their beautiful new clothes the emperor had made for them.
Another book recommendation I just finished, Cardinal Sarah's God or Nothing. That's another breath of fresh air where somebody who gets it, he's got these quotes on the West, he's got quotes like, you know, the Western society, we live life as if God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There it is, right there.
Yeah, we're not supposed to notice.
Yeah. Oh, man, Cardinal Sarah is so good.
I'd like to point out that Tumbler House doesn't carry either Pope Benedict books or Cardinal Sarah's book.
But we carry them in our bookstore. We retail them.
Oh, dun dun dun.
TumblerHouse.com.
Hear that, Suits? That was a plug.
Yeah.
Gosh, they're so annoying. I don't even know what they do up there all day.
Just drinking and smoking.
Probably.
All the time.
Just martini after martini. I no wonder the motor pool has to cart those guys home every day. Makes sense. They wouldn't allow them out on the highway.
All right, next question is from CJ. You have previously mentioned that corporal punishment is good for children, provided that the act is just, the rules are clear, and that it is not done while one is angry. As a follow-up question, are mothers permitted to administer corporal punishment without the father's express permission?
Well, that is really something a couple have to decide for themselves. I mean, in my house, my mother never hit us. My dad was the disciplinarian. That was it. Mother, you know, it was really a case of wait till your father gets home, if she was that annoyed. The problem I have in trying to answer that question for you is that my mother simply was not a disciplinarian. She just didn't do that. That was Dad's job. And she would tell him, you know, when we'd do things, but it was up to him to decide what response would be made. You know, the most she'd get with us was, don't make me tell your father about this. Then that was generally enough to shut us down. And I suppose with some other family, that would have turned the father into a kind of ogre. It didn't with us. We didn't want to look bad in front of him. I don't know, it's a good question, but it's one that I think that probably every husband and wife have to figure out on their own. But it's definitely one of the issues that if you're going to get married, you need to sit down with your fiancé and discuss. Because, ladies and gentlemen, these are the kinds of things that you've got to get ironed out before you get married. I realize it's not the kind of thing that one likes to talk about when we're in love. Oh, sorry, never mind. Anyway, but it's ultra important both for your own future happiness and that of whichever children come your way.
Next question is from Keith Bray.
Okay.
I recently read that Kit Harington from Game of Thrones is helping to produce a new show about the gunpowder plot from the perspective of the Catholics involved. My question is, were Guy Fawkes and the other Catholics really framed? Were they unjustly tortured and executed?
I honestly don't know. This is one of these things like, Pope Alexander VI, the Borgia Pope. You know, there are two schools of thought. I've read them both, and I am not qualified to choose between them. I don't know. What I do know is that I'm glad he's doing this, anyway, to get people thinking about it. The last film that featured Guy Fawkes that I'm aware of was V for Vendetta. And that pulled off the neat trick of turning him into a symbol of freedom without ever mentioning what his religion was, which would be a little bit like having a civil rights documentary on Martin Luther King without touching on the whole racial thing. So, have at it, kid.
Okay. Our last question for today is from Sylvain Durand.
Ah, comment ça va, mon vieux? Qu'est-ce que penses-tu about? What?
Greetings again, fellow papists. Here's that annoying French-Canadian once more with his question of the week.
I would like to point out as one myself, that annoying French-Canadian, that applies to us all. That's like saying the Anglo with the two eyes. What are you talking about?
Okay.
All right.
Readers of the Father Baptist series of novels, available at tumblrhouse.com, will be aware of this quote by St. John Eudes, which our clerical detective keeps framed in his study. The quote is, "The most evident mark of God's anger and the most terrible castigation he can inflict upon the world is manifest when he permits his people to fall into the hands of a clergy who are more in name than in deed, priests who practice the cruelty of ravening wolves rather than the charity and affection of devoted shepherds. They abandon the things of God to devote themselves to the things of the world, and in their saintly calling of holiness, they spend their time in profane and worldly pursuits. When God permits such things, it is a very positive proof that he is thoroughly angry with his people and is visiting his most dreadful wrath upon them." End quote. We are used to blaming the ecclesiastical authorities for the mess we are in. Heaven knows I do. But if St. John is to be believed, they are the punishment and not the cause. If this is the case, what have the people of God done to deserve such a chastisement? Of what must we repent, and could the solution to the crisis of the church lie there?
Well, I'll tell you what, dare come from, man. You really got a good thing you ask me, you. What?
That's your French Canadian?
Well, it's gonna have to do for the moment. No, that's really a good question because, well, as my nephew Albert would say, I don't like that, so it's a lie, because it shifts the focus of the evil clergy to our wonderful selves.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. We're responsible.
No, that's a terrible thought. But the answer is, yeah, absolutely. Because look at what happened after Vatican II. And I'll take the Révolution Tranquille, the Quiet Revolution of Quebec, as an example. Quebec was the most Catholic section of North America. Everything was Catholic. The trade unions were Catholic. Quebec had been led for a long time by a very, I consider a very good man, called Maurice Duplessis, who was the Prime Minister of the province. He died in 1959. He was replaced by another member of his party, I think, was it Daniel Janson or someone like that? Janson is a wonderful old French name. It looks like Johnson. See, back when the French Canadians had was something called a birth rate. Yeah, what would happen is that foreigners would get assimilated. So you had people with names like Janson or Rion or Matonal who couldn't speak a word of French, even though their names looked like Johnson, Ryan, or McDonald. You see, because we were English, rather. Which some have made the same accusation toward me, but I think I speak very well. Anyway, here's the thing. Back in those days, it is hard to understand for us what a marvelously Catholic people the French Canadians were. At the time, the day that I was born, we had in Quebec a lieutenant governor, that's the representative of the Queen, by the name of Paul Comtois, who's important to keep in mind. And we also had, as Governor General of Canada, General Georges Vanier, and he and his wife are now up for beatification.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that. They're up for beatification.
Okay.
That was the French Canadian leadership of that time. In 10 years, all gone, no more, bye-bye. We had the odious Justin Bieber Trudeau's even more odious father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, as Prime Minister. And Quebec secularized itself as quickly as it could. It was the lay people doing that. Now, to be fair, the clerics went really awful after Vatican II. And not just in Quebec, but the Canadian hierarchy condemned Humane Vitae. And when the odious Trudeau went to them and asked, he said, I'm going to bring an abortion, and you guys are going to oppose me. And, oh, no, no. So Canada directly received abortion as a result of the I don't want to say cowardice, that would be unkind, of the collaboration of the Catholic bishops. But where were the laity?
Mm.
They liked it. They still like it, most of them.
Yeah.
Same in Ireland. The Irish, as Catholic can be. And only the first people before the heavily Irish Australians to vote in gay marriage. That's what they've become.
Okay.
Now, we got these clergy because we, the Catholic laity, in all of our multinational manifestations, whether here or South Africa or the United States or well, this is the United States, I was thinking Canada, Britain, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, we were not interested in Catholicizing society and evangelizing non-Catholics. We were not interested in living Catholic lives. We were not interested in passing the faith on to the children. Catholicism was, for most of us, merely a sort of tribal name.
Mm.
So guess what we got?
What the? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that generation of priests is still with us and in charge. One of them is now the Holy Father. I don't want to say that St. John Eudes' comments could be applied to him. I would never want to say that.
Yeah.
However, it certainly is an interesting thing.
Mm.
And we deserve it. We absolutely deserve it. If you don't like the misuse of the ordinary magisterium to mean anything our clerical lords and masters want it to, live the faith yourself. How many of us know the four creeds? How many of us knew the four creeds at the time of Vatican II? Not too many. We know the Apostles' Creed because we recited it at the Rosary. We know the Nicene Creed because it gets thrown at us every Sunday. Do we know the Athanasian Creed? No. Do we know the Tridentine Creed or Creed of Pius IV? No.
Oh, there's good reason for that. That's
I did long. Like, no. And it's not like it was important like sports or movies or my job. Yeah, I know. Anything's more important than my religion. I know that. And so I've got the priests I've got. You know, ladies and gentlemen, when I was in the California National Guard ages ago, during the mid-'80s, when the prospect of the Guard ever being sent to war was seemingly minimal, we had a good saying. and it applies to clergy and laity both. Sleep well, America. Your National Guard does. So,
Okay.
I would say, remember, dearest, dearest brother laity, our clergy will never be holier than we are. What?
Our clergy will never be holier than we are?
No. Where do you think clergy come from?
Us?
There aren't these special clergy eggs that are laid. You know, that's not how that happens.
Okay.
They come from lay backgrounds, lay homes, you know. So, oh honey, I laid a cleric egg. I thought I was pregnant with a child, but it's a priest. That's not how that works. Same for sisters. They don't hatch out of eggs either.
Wow. Okay.
Religious brothers, same thing. Even the Pope had parents. He wasn't hatched. None of them are hatched.
Well, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have good laity, you won't have good clergy. But it is, to be fair, a bit of a chicken and egg thing, because of course the clergy have an effect on the laity, and it is easier for the clergy to turn themselves around for the laity than the laity, because the clergy have nothing else to do,
Ah,
whereas the laity are very busy doing other stuff,
yeah.
learning football scores, watching sitcoms. Anyway, sorry. Whereas the clergy, I mean, they have every priest has the tools close at hand to be a good priest. And every layman, it's not the case. Some of us have to struggle.
I just barely got reminded of a quote, because you're right. It is sort of turning into a chicken or the egg situation. But I'm remembering a quote just now talking about the spiritual generation, how the parishioners underneath a priest are always one step down in holiness.
Yeah.
Like if he's a saint, well then they're super pious.
Yeah, they're super pious.
If the priest is pious, then they're strong. But if the priest is lukewarm or whatever, then they're just they're a step down from that.
Yeah. Sometimes we'll find a parish that's stronger than its priest. And usually there's problems when that happens.
Wow, yeah.
Well, I mean, if his predecessor was a really good guy,
Oh,
and then he comes into this mess of Catholics,
yeah.
he was very upset.
He gets upset. His parish doesn't get upset. He
No,
gets
they
upset.
probably get upset too. There was a fun story in Guatemala in the 80s at some point. This new American priest came into this parish. And that was a poor little church, bunch of Capuchinos. The only thing of any value they had, other than the chalice and paten, were the silver ornaments that were put on the statue of the Virgin Mary on the annual fiesta. So he decided that he was going to sell these and give the money to the poor of the parish, which was just about everybody. Well, when they got wind of that, they tied him up, left him on the side of the road, and called the bishop of Guatemala City and told him to pick him up. They'd had enough already.
Wow.
It's what we call lay action in accordance with Vatican II.
It's beautiful.
I think so. But, no, so anyway, Sylvain, there's my answer to your question. Yeah, you're absolutely right, of course. At the end of the day, the responsibility, the buck should stop with me. And all of us me's. Let me see, we got anything else? I guess that was
that's it. We're done. We're done.
Wow, there's another one in the can, as they say.
Another one in the can. That's it for this episode. If you'd like to send Charles a question, you can do so through the Tumblr House website. And we'll see you next time.
Yep, and remember, Christmas is not over yet. Start making your Candlemas plans. Try to find a church where they've got the traditional Capital Mass, maybe with a procession, you know. Do your best, ladies and gentlemen. And if you can't get to a Candlemas liturgically, at least keep it at home. Get yourself a blessed candle and say the prayers and all. It's a beautiful feast. And, you know what, I'm about ready to kick back now.
Kick back?
Yeah, I'm ready to kick back. You know, relax. The way that lady got upset at us.
Yeah.
And we can discuss quantum physics.
Oh, that would be great.
All right, let's do it.
That's right.
So what do you do?
All right. We'll see you next time.
Take care.